Hello everyone, my name's Mono, and today I'm here to tell you how you can improve not only Sonic OCs, but any of your OCs just by understanding one element of art: color. As an artist who's been shown literally hundreds of other artist OCs through commission work and various videos I've made here on YouTube, you start to pick up on a lot of little trends and patterns, especially with beginner artists. Over time, I've realized that a lot of those patterns tend to be associated with color, which just happens to be one of my main focus points when it comes to art. While I've always struggled to word myself for things like tutorials, I love talking about theory and the thought process behind art, because there really is so much more to art than just throwing lines and colors down. So why not tell you guys some of the advice that helped me create characters with better palettes? Oh, and before we begin, I'm very excited to say that I am working with a brand for the first time. Full disclosure, I'm not being paid for this, but Parblo reached out to send me one of their tablets, the Intangbo X7, to try out and tell you guys my thoughts on it. This packaging is really nice. It's quite fitting for a color-themed video that they have such a nice palette. I actually think other art tablet companies can take notes from Parblo on this. As an artist, it feels really good when companies that literally rely on artists put in the effort to have well-designed packaging. It's much friendlier than a plain box. First impressions. Please ignore me fumbling with the box, I promise it's not that hard to open. So, this tablet comes with a helpful before you use sheet. I'll be reading that in just a moment. Look at these adorable stickers that came with it. I love stickers, those will be fun to paste all over my sketchbook. And then we've got the tablet itself. Parblo kindly sent me the green version, but I believe it also comes in pink and black. I'm personally most fond of the green one though. Once I have this open, you can see this tablet has a scroll wheel. Definitely an interesting feature I haven't seen on any other pen tablets yet. This tablet lets you switch between using it on a phone, tablet, Chromebook, and PC, using the little knob at the top. I'll definitely be testing this out with my different devices just to see what's most comfortable. As you can see, there are also 5 programmable buttons on the tablet itself. The tablet itself is super lightweight too, probably the lightest one I've picked up. Moving on, the stylus itself appears to have the nib removal tool attached to it. I do like that for easy safekeeping, as I've managed to lose those in the past. The grip is relatively soft, with 2 buttons on the pen itself. It also came with a cleaning cloth, an artist's glove, of which I can always use extras. Now, here's where I spotted something pretty interesting. This pen has this cute little holder, which I'm pretty fond of since it's super easy to lose a stylus. Finally, there's some extra nibs, the cord, and the USB-C adapter for using this tablet with other tablets and phones. Anyway, with this tablet in our hands, it's time to use it for this video's art. I'll be drawing this video's thumbnail and any more art I might show using only this tablet. Hey guys, editing Mono cutting in here real quick. So for reasons you'll understand more towards the end of the video, unfortunately I only ended up drawing the video's thumbnail with this tablet. I just didn't want to give off the wrong impression. Okay, continue. And I'll let you guys know my thoughts closer to the end, so make sure you stick around. And if you are interested in the Intangbo X7, I'll have a link in the description. Thank you so much to Parblo for sending me this tablet and for giving me the opportunity to review it. Now, starting the video for real this time, let's begin with the basics. Why do we want to understand color? Well, color and how you use it can say a lot about your characters just from a glance. If you use color effectively in your designs, you can communicate things like their personality or even their role in a story without needing to use a single word. Of course, the best character designs rely on a lot more than just color, but wielding color correctly can elevate a design from being just good to great. This video is going to be structured more so like a tip list. I highly recommend you take whichever pieces of advice benefit you, and if there's something that doesn't quite work for you, it's okay to leave things as well. My first tip: learn a bit of color psychology for the next time you pick a character's color palette. If you look at a lot of characters from the media you like, you might start to notice trends with the colors used for certain personalities and types of characters. For example, many fiery characters, whether that's in personality, powers, or both, tend to have warmer color palettes, typically including reds, oranges, and yellows. Red especially is noted in color psychology to represent passion, blood, energy, anger, basically intense emotions. Meanwhile, characters associated with things like sadness, coldness, even emotionlessness may be better suited for a blue color palette, but maybe a really happy-go-lucky character would do well with more yellow in their palette to symbolize joy and optimism. Green characters may be associated with nature, calmness, or even disgust. Combined with the rest of your palette, you can send a message about your character when considering these meanings. But hey, let's say you really want to make a character with a certain palette that goes against the norm. Well, you can also use color psychology to surprise your viewers. One of my favorite examples is Nui Harume from the anime Kill la Kill. Nui is extremely cute, and her entire palette is pink and pastel. This might have you letting your guard down, thinking she's some wholesome, cute girl. However, she's arguably one of the most insane and evil characters in the entire show. Once you understand color psychology, you can use your newfound power to really mess with people's heads. However, at the end of the day, it also boils down to context. Colors mean a lot of different things to different people, and even things like cultural differences can significantly shift how people perceive the meanings of colors. So I don't recommend taking this tip as a strict rule, more so as a nudge to try creating color palettes that match things like a character's role, their personality, their powers, stuff like that. The more themes you can interconnect in a character's design, the stronger they'll come off. Alright, moving on. My next tip is actually a don't when it comes to picking your color palettes. Regardless of what shape your color palette uses, whether it's the triangle, the square, or a slider, don't use the corners. What do I mean by this? Basically, avoid the corners of whatever shape your art program uses for your color picker, and especially avoid using pure values. Pure values are hex codes such as the 6 zeros for black, the 6 Fs for white, FF0000, 00FF00, 0000FF, and so on and so forth. You can Google a chart if you need it for other colors like pure cyan or pure magenta, for example. If your hex codes are looking very unscrambled and your colors are extremely bright or extremely dark, then you might be a little too far on the spectrum. Now, I'm not saying that you should only use desaturated colors and avoid all vivids, no. But if you really like vivid colors like I do, then you should learn how to balance your palette to accommodate them. You can use near pure values and still have a balanced palette, but you should probably limit those pure colors to 1 or 2, not the entire palette. My Sona is actually a really good example of this. Vendetta has nearly pure cyan eyes, but the entire rest of her palette is balanced around this so the color can pop without making her an eye strain mess. Another tip. Once you've got all of your colors down, I recommend you go into your art program, take your character's reference, and reduce all of the colors to 0 saturation. You can also use grayscale mode if your program or device has that. So why are we doing this? Well, you don't want to place colors that look too similar directly next to each other, or they'll look muddy and get lost. For example, let's say your character has spots, but they're in a color that's pretty close to your character's main color, and when you reduce the saturation, it's really hard to tell them apart. If you notice areas like this in your design, I recommend playing with your palette a bit more until you find something you're happy with that still sticks out as an individual color, even when your drawing is in grayscale. I find that usually I can fix this by making a color just a little bit lighter or darker, maybe messing with the hue slider, but some colors are just going to be trickier, and that's okay. By making sure your colors aren't too close, your design will be much easier to understand, and if you're commissioning or doing art trades, it'll also help others draw your characters as well. Now, I wasn't too sure where to put this tip as it tends to go hand in hand with the other ones I've talked about already, but I also wanted to mention that you should learn about the different types of color palettes. These include analogous, complementary, split complementary, monochromatic, triadic, tetradic, and square palettes. In case you're unfamiliar, I'll quickly go over what each of these are. Analogous palettes consist of 3 color families located directly next to each other on the color wheel. For example, green, yellow, and orange, red, blue, and purple, purple, blue, and green, and so on. Complementary colors are on opposite sides of the color wheel. Blue and orange, red and green, purple and yellow. These are also good to memorize if you like shading your artwork. Complementary palettes will be high contrast in nature. Split complementary palettes are similar to complementary colors, except instead of taking the color directly across, you will be taking the 2 colors adjacent to the opposite color. Monochromatic palettes only utilize 1 color, but may use different shades or tints, aka adding black or white to make the color lighter or darker. Triadic palettes can be easy to mistake for split complementary, but instead, triadic palettes will use 3 colors that are evenly spaced across the color wheel. Tetradic palettes use 4 colors in the shape of a rectangle, using 2 sets of complementary colors. Square palettes are technically a type of tetradic palette, but they appear as squares. They appear as 4 evenly spaced corners on the color wheel. By understanding these color palette types, you can easily pick sets of colors that work well with each other, helping your characters stand out. Here's an example where I decided to use a monochromatic color palette. I highly recommend playing with your colors until you're happy with them, as you don't want them to be super bright and clash with each other, especially when you're using complementary colors. Finally, I wanted to give some advice and options for folks who may struggle with applying these techniques. If picking colors from the color wheel on your own still feels daunting, I highly recommend looking for color palettes online. The only issue is that color palette generators can be limited with how many colors they'll give you, so if you need more than 5 to 6 colors, I recommend color picking from photos. You can also study the color choices of artists you look up to. When you color pick, don't just take the colors and move on. Pay attention to how your color wheel changes, and you'll begin to pick up on some of those intuitive choices for yourself. Also, a friendly reminder, at the end of the day, palette theft doesn't exist, so don't be scared to experiment with the colors you want to use. With all that said, I've been using the Intangbo X7 throughout this video's production, and it's time for my review. Here are the notes I've been taking throughout this video. So unfortunately, the tablet did get scratched almost immediately after I took off the protective film. I'm not sure why or how. This could have been anything, so I'm not counting it against it. I also noticed it is incredibly easy to get this tablet to disconnect if you nudge the cord even slightly. Unfortunately, I think the lightweight design actually hindered this tablet, especially because I felt like I was holding it in place with my hand even while using a desk mat. After downloading the driver and messing with a few settings, I opened up Clip Studio, started drawing, and oh, I feel really bad saying this because I do like a lot of the quality of life aspects of this tablet. I like how cute it is, but unfortunately, I can't ignore that the actual drawing experience on this tablet was not good. The cursor is very jumpy, way more so than the cheap XP pen I use that retails for half the price. While I do like this tablet's size and programmable buttons, the drawing experience is the part that matters above all else, and I was constantly having problems with lines not going down the way I needed them to, no matter how much I mess with my stabilizer settings or the tablet settings. I actually ended up giving up on clean lines and went for a slightly more sketchy style in hopes that leaning into the wobble would help. I really didn't want to be negative about this tablet because they did mostly everything else right, but this is the single most important thing to get right with any pen tablet. My quality of work here doesn't feel good at all compared to what I can typically pull off, and I'm sorry if the quality of art in this video isn't the best. I feel like I've built up somewhat decent line confidence, and I try not to be super zoomed into my canvas, but I definitely found myself zooming in way more than usual just in an attempt to get decent lines, only to still feel dissatisfied with how wobbly they were. Since this tablet does allow you to use it on tablets and phones, I did briefly attempt this, but I found the computer to be the most comfortable of the experiences. I usually draw directly on a screen using the S Pen that comes with both my Note 20 Ultra and my S9 FE, so you can't really beat that experience. Now, in the spirit of fairness, I will say that I no longer use pen tablets on a regular basis. Maybe someone who uses them more regularly would have an easier time adjusting to this tablet. However, I just can't in good conscience recommend it over other options with better pricing. While I know it takes some privilege to say this, in the current day of not just dedicated art tablets, including screens, but also regular phones and tablets with built-in stylus support being viable, and even often preferred options for artists, the pen tablet increasingly feels more like a budget option or even something you give to a kid to mess with. Pen tablets are slowly becoming obsolete as time goes on, and the higher the price of a pen tablet, the more I will expect it to deliver. I mean, this thing does cost more than an old Intuos from Wacom that I got a while ago, and those guys are kinda like the OG of pen tablets. But hey, at least you can use it to play OS. With that said, I want to thank Parblo again for the opportunity to review this tablet. I think a fair and honest review is extremely important, and I hope my feedback is received not as hate, but as genuine constructive criticism. Anyway, it's about time I wrap this video up. Thank you so much to my channel members, and if you liked today's video and want to show your support, make sure to comment, like, and subscribe. With that said, I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye!